Ramanujan for G is now available on the Google Play Store. Try it out for free.
So, good morning, student. What we have seen in our last class that the Henry's law, the partial pressure is proportional to the mole fraction of the gas. The partial pressure of the gas above the solution is proportional to the mole fraction of the gas inside the solution. And later on, what we were left with is the application of the Henry's law. So, what is the application? The one thing that we uh, talk about is that high altitudes, the partial pressure of oxygen is less than that at the ground level. Why partial pressure is less? Because as you go, the gas is heavier, so its density will be lower above, and the lighter gases will be more as we go up into the up as we go at high altitudes. So this leads to low concentration of oxygen in blood and tissues of climbers or people living at high altitudes. Low blood oxygen causes climbers to become weak and unable to think clearly, symptoms of a condition that is known as anoxia. What happens if the people who are residing in high altitudes, usually their RBC concentration or number of RBC per ml of the blood is larger, it is higher, and this happens because they have lower concentration of oxygen, or the partial pressure of oxygen is less. Partial pressure of a gas is less means the concentration of gas is less in that environment, and because of the less concentration or less partial pressure of oxygen, they need more oxygen, and to compensate that, they have relatively higher number of RBCs in their blood. So this is what is reported in the literature. And another thing is that, but the people who are living in plains, when they go to higher altitude, those climbers or those who like doing trekkings, so what happens? Their RBCs do not have that number, and they to compensate the less concentration of oxygen. So what they feel that the blood contains low level of oxygen, and it causes climbers to become weak. Because why they feel weak? Because oxygen, it is very important for us for the respiration, and oxygen is being utilized for the oxidation of food, and during the oxidation of food, what we get energy for our survival or the work that we do. So if they don't get enough oxygen for the generation of energy, what will the weakness will definitely come. So, and we also know that our brain requires a lot of energy to work, to function, and that if the oxygen level is less, then uh, certainly we also feel some inability or this haziness. There are many things that will be there, and that because of that, the clear thinking will not come. So this kind of thinking difficulties people face, particularly the climbers when they go at higher altitudes. And the symptom is called anoxia. Anoxia is a kind of oxy means oxygen. The less amount of oxygen is there is anoxia. So another example that we should always talk about is the cold drinks or the soda water. To increase the solubility of carbon dioxide in soft drinks and soda water, the bottle is sealed under the high pressure. High pressure it is sealed. Why it is sealed under the high pressure? Because Henry's law tells us that if the pressure of the gas above the solution is high, its dissolution in the liquid will be higher. The water that we take, it will be higher. So its mole fraction will be higher. So if you want to have more and more carbon dioxide and that carbonic acid into the bottle, into the solution, and that one can use for the drinking purposes, then you have to put carbon dioxide gas at higher pressure. And if you don't put carbon dioxide gas at higher pressure, if you won't keep, what will happen? Then this reverse reaction will happen. And because of that, the dissolved carbon dioxide will go into the gaseous phase, and so the carbon dioxide concentration in the solution will decrease, and that will not serve our purpose. That is exactly opposite to what we wanted. So that is why when we open uh, the cans where these cold drinks or the soft drinks are there, then gas fizzes out whenever bottle is open. The mass of carbon dioxide gas dissolved is high. Why this fizzes out? Because the mass of carbon dioxide gas dissolved is high, and the carbon dioxide gas above the solution is at very high pressure. And so that is what we see, some empty spaces there, the carbon dioxide gases are there. As soon as the bottle is opened, the pressure tend to decrease to atmospheric pressure, definitely, because once you open the vessel or you open the can, what happens? These gases will diffuse, and the gases will diffuse. It will try to have the pressure equal to the atmospheric pressure, and because of that, it happens very fast. So that's what we call it. Some the sound comes, we say the gas fizzes out. So, however, when the bottle is left open to air for some time, it does not fizz. It is because of the fact that pressure inside and outside the bottle becomes same, because after leaving this bottle open for a certain time, the reaction reached to the equilibrium. All the carbon dioxide that was dissolved there, now it has gone to atmosphere, and there is a vapor pressure or this that is equal to the atmospheric pressure now, and that will now there will be a clear equilibrium, and thus as soon as the equilibrium reached, there will be still some amount of carbon dioxide dissolved in that solution, but it will not be a higher concentration. And so we that the pressure inside and outside becomes equal. This is what that we know. The another example that we talk about the uh, when the application of Henry's law is the scuba diving. And scuba diving is scuba dive. What is scuba diving? The self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. Scuba means that if you take certain apparatus for the breathing purposes, which has oxygen concentration, enough oxygen concentration that you can use for breathing inside water, that is called the scuba. And the divers that go inside using this facility is called the scuba divers. When they go inside and this apparatus, this is scuba, that the gas present is at very high pressure, and if the gas is at very high pressure, it will go and it is associated, it is connected to our nose and to the lungs, so the high concentration of oxygen goes to lungs, and similarly it diffuses more, and not only oxygen, even nitrogen and others, it diffuses more into the blood. And as soon as it goes into the blood, and they are there in the water for certain purposes, they go for certain searching or wreckage to find out the wreckage of the ships and many other things. So as soon as they start coming out, so whatever they happen, this happens very fast. They come out, and the gas that has already gone into the blood vessels, now it has, because the pressure outside when they come outside, that go to the atmosphere and even near to the surface of the water, what happens? The pressure that water puts on our body is lesser, and that whatever the gas that we have seen, it has gone to our bloodstream. That is because of the higher pressure of the, that is balanced with the higher pressure of the water that we feel when we go much deeper into the water, and this pressure decreases. So what will happen? Then the gas that was dissolved into the blood, now the gas will start coming out, and it will start coming out, then the bubbles will start forming into the blood, which will come out very fast. And so until otherwise you just come out very slowly, extremely slowly, that is very difficult. Then what people did, they did certain things. The nitrogen, this releases the dissolved gases and leads to the formation of bubbles of nitrogen in the blood. This blocks capillaries, and bubbles are there, and bubbles, whenever the bubbles forms, what will happen? So some kind of cohesive forces that are there between the liquids, so the blood that is there, that will decrease, and because of this cohesiveness, also that in the veins, the blood has go to the above the body, and there is no one who can push the blood or press the blood into the veins. And these capillaries, if suppose this oxygen bubbles or nitrogen bubbles are there, then this cohesive forces between water molecules, actually it helps for the flowing of blood into the vessels. It will decrease, it will break this cohesive forces, and so what will happen? It also leads to the pain, and sometimes also it is very dangerous. It also leads to the death. So, and this condition is called bends. To avoid bends, as well as the toxic effects of high concentration of nitrogen in the blood, the tanks used by scuba divers are filled with air diluted with helium. So now this air is diluted with helium, but you know, helium, so that K's value is very high. This and this nitrogen concentration, as usually in the air, nitrogen concentration is around 78, and it has decreased to 56.2. Why? Because the nitrogen bubbles were forming, so its concentration decreased. Helium is there, and the oxygen concentration is little larger than the normal oxygen concentration in air, because we need higher oxygen concentration there to breathe. Let us look into these examples. Henry's of this numerical problems. The Henry's law constant for carbon dioxide in water is 1.67 into 10 to the power 8 Pascal at 298 Kelvin. Calculate the quantity of carbon dioxide in 500 ml soda water when packed under 2.5 atmospheric CO2 pressure at 298 Kelvin. So the value of Kh is given at 298 Kelvin. The pressure is also given, the partial pressure at 298 Kelvin. The this temperature is same. And what is given? The water that is taken in 500 ml. 500 ml, if you know the density of water, which is 1 gram per ml, 500 ml water means the 500 gram water, means half kg water. Now from the Henry's law, we know P is equal to Kh into X. Kh is a Henry's law constant. X is the mole fraction of the gas into the solution. P is the partial pressure, or the pressure of the gas is the only gas, then the pressure of the gas above the solution. So from that in the case of carbon dioxide, we can get X, the mole fraction of carbon dioxide into the solution, will be equal to the partial pressure of carbon dioxide divided by Henry's law constant for carbon dioxide. And this will be equal to what is given. This partial pressure is given as 2.5 atmospheric pressure. Let us convert this into the Pascal, because the Henry's law constant is given into the Pascal. So this partial pressure, when we will convert into the Pascal, what we will have to do, we will have to multiply this value 2.5 atmospheric pressure value to the 1.01 into 10 to the power 5 Pascal, because 1 atmospheric pressure is equal to 1.01 into 10 to the power 5 Pascal. So 2.5 atmospheric pressure will be equal to 2.5 into 1.01 into 10 to the power 5 Pascal, which will come to it 2.525 into 10 to the power 5 Pascal. This value we can put here at the place of PCO2. And now Henry's law constant value is already given. So 1.67 into 10 to the power 8 Pascal, that I can put here. So Pascal will be cancelled out. So there will be no dimension. And anyway, this is what we are calculating, the mole fraction, which is a dimensionless, which doesn't have any unit. And now solving this, we get 1.51 into 10 to the power minus 3. And this is the mole fraction of carbon dioxide in water. And this mole fraction means what? Moles of carbon dioxide divided by total moles. And total moles means what? The number of moles of water plus number of moles of carbon dioxide, because this is a binary solution and only two components are reported here, given here, water and carbon dioxide. And as I said, 500 ml water means the 500 gram water, or 500 gram water means what? How many moles of water? It will be equal to 500 gram divided by 18. Why? 18 is the molar mass of water, and we know the number of moles is equal to mass of a substance divided by molar mass of that substance in gram. And so we can write here now the mole fraction. This 1.51 into 10 to the power minus 3 is equal to, and this number moles of carbon dioxide, let us consider this as N. This will be divided by N, again mole fraction of carbon dioxide plus moles of carbon dioxide plus moles of water, is 500 gram divided by 18. And as we know, this N should be very small, because this anyway the mole fraction is very small. So what can one do? One can ignore this value of N as comparison to 500 gram. It is quite higher than this value N. And if N was less than then only we got this mole fraction value very small. So this is also N is also small, so one can ignore that. It won't affect the result by any significant amount. So what we will obtain? We will obtain this equation as 1.51 into 10 to the power minus 3 is equal to N divided by 27.78. What is 27.78? 500 divided by 18 is 27.78. At this number I have, this value of N I have ignored here. So now the value of N, I can find out N is equal to 1.51 into 10 to the power minus 3 into 27.78 mole. And so after solving this, I get 4.19 into 10 to the power minus 2 mole. And this is the number of moles of carbon dioxide. But what we have to find out is calculate the quantity of CO2. So we have to calculate the mass of carbon dioxide. The number of moles we have calculated. Here from the Henry's law, we have directly got the mole fraction of carbon dioxide. But that is not what is asked in the question. We have the question, this, we have to calculate the quantity, the mass of carbon dioxide dissolved in water. So to do that, then we have to come with this strategy. And this is a very common, very general thing. We have seen such examples earlier as well. So now you can convert mole into the gram. How will you convert? So number of moles, we know number of moles is equal to mass in gram divided by molar mass. So then if the molar, now the number of moles is given. So what can you do? The number of moles into the molar mass will be equal to mass in gram. As what I said again, I repeat, the number of moles, the formula is number of moles is equal to mass of a substance in gram divided by molar mass of that substance in gram. So what will happen? So the mass of that substance will be equal to the number of moles into the molar mass. So since the mass of this moles of carbon dioxide is given, so this moles I can convert into the mass as well if I multiply number of moles of carbon dioxide with the molar mass of carbon dioxide. And the molar mass of carbon dioxide is 44 gram per mole. And this one can calculate CO2, carbon 12, oxygen, 2 oxygens are there. So 16 into 2, 32 plus 12, 44. So I multiplied this number of moles with 44 gram per mole. This is the molar mass of carbon dioxide, and this is the mole. So mole per mole will be cancelled out. What will be the left? The gram, unit gram, and you multiply this number to this number, you will get 1.84. So this number, the value. So thus the amount of, or the quantity of carbon dioxide that is was dissolved, but that was dissolved in 500 ml of water is 1.84 gram. Now coming to the next question, H2S, a toxic gas with rotten egg-like smell. This is one thing, one peculiar feature of H2S gas. When you will go to the characterizing certain anions or cations, certain kind of things in your laboratory, and if the sulfide ion is there into the, means the salt analysis, this is called salt analysis. If the sulfide ion is there and you treat it with certain molecules, and H2S gas will be evolved. So its characteristic is what people say, if the gas is evolved with the rotten egg-like smell, it means probably it is the H2S. This means this is the preliminary test. It represents, it suggests that H2S is there. To confirm it, we do another experiment and then confirm it is indeed the H2S gas. So anyway, H2S gas is a toxic gas with rotten egg-like smell, is used for the quantitative analysis. If the solubility of once just yes. So the solubility of H2S in water at STP is 0.195 molar. Calculate Henry's law constant. So now the solubility is given in molar. It is not the mole fraction that we use, so that we can directly apply it into the Henry's law. So what we have to do, from the molar concentration, we have to find out the mole fraction first. Then we can directly apply the Henry's law. And how will you convert molar concentration into the mole fraction? Mole fraction is also a concentration term, so that we know the molar concentration means what? Molality is the number of moles of a solute dissolved in 1 kilogram of a solvent. So 1 kilogram of a solvent, and what is dissolved here? The solvent that we have taken is usually water. So this is the water that is used to quantitative if the solubility is in water. See, the solvent is water. It is already given. And the gas, the solute is the H2S gas. So the 0.195 molar concentration of H2S in water means 0.195 moles of H2S gas is dissolved in 1 kilogram of water. And if the mass of water is given, mass of the solvent is given, and we know the solvent, if you know the solvent, you can find out the molar mass. And the water molar mass, as we know, it is 18 gram per mole. And how it is 18 gram? 2 hydrogen, 2 is 2 into 1, and plus oxygen, 1 oxygen atom is there in one molecule, it is 16. So 16 plus 2 is 18. So if we know the molar mass of water, and if we know the molar mass of water, and if we know the mass of water, then we can also find out the number of moles of water. And the number of moles of water, for before doing that, let us consider that whatever the molality that is given, the 0.195 means, let us consider the amount of H2S equals to 0.195 mole. 0.195 mole, as soon as we consider this much H2S in the solution, it means 1 kilogram of water is already there into the solution. And 1 kilogram of water, you can calculate the number of moles, and we know it is 1000 divided by 18, and 1000 divided by 18 will be equal to 55.56 or 55.556, you can write. So the mole fraction of H2S thus we can calculate, and it will be equal to the number of moles of H2S gas, the hydrogen sulfide gas, divided by number of moles of H2S plus number of moles of water. So the number of moles of H2S that we have, that is already given, we know it is 0.195 mole, divided by again number of moles of H2S that we can write directly, plus number of moles of water, and number of moles of water in 1 kilogram water means 1000 gram water is 55.556 moles. And after solving this, so what these values, these two values we can add, and these values once we add, it will be equal to 55.571 mole. This mole will be cancelled out, so the number will be 0.195 divided by 55.571. This is a dimensionless, again it means the mole fraction is there, so we are right here. And this will be equal to the, after solving this, we will obtain 3.4976 into 10 to the power minus 3. And rounding of this number, you can write this as 3.5 into 10 to the power minus 3. And this means, how will you round up? So if this is 0.9, which is more than 5, is very closer to that. And even if you try to round out of this number at the second place of decimal, what will you do? This is more than 5, so you increase this number as 1. So this number 9 plus 1 10, it will become 10. 0, the carry forward will be 1, and that will be added here 5. So this is 3.5 into 10 to the power minus 3. I hope you know how can one can round up the number out of the, hello, rounding of the numbers. I have already taught it, I think, in the first chapter itself. So this is 3.5 into 10 to the power minus 3. Now we can apply the Henry's law, and Henry's law, the P, we know P is equal to Kh into X. So the Kh, Henry's law constant we have to calculate. So Henry's law constant will be equal to the P pressure of H2S, which is a 1 atmospheric pressure, because it is STP, and STP means that pressure is 1 atmospheric pressure, divided by the mole fraction of H2S. And mole fraction of H2S we have calculated, 1 divided by this. So what will we get is, after solving this, 2.86 into 10 to the power 2 atmosphere. And this is the Henry's law constant for H2S gas that we have calculated from the value given or the data given in this problem. Now let us come to the liquid solutions. And liquid solution means what? The solvent is liquid usually, as we know. And again I repeat that we will be mostly focusing on the binary solutions. And binary solutions, and what is the solvent? Or something which is in excess amount is the solvent. So liquid solutions are what? If the solvent is liquid, the substance which is in excess is in liquid form, liquid state, then we get the liquid solutions. Solute could be a solid, liquid, or a gas. So liquid solutions are formed when solvent is a liquid, irrespective of the physical state of the solute. Solutions of gases in liquids have already been discussed in Henry's law. I have discussed it. We know, we have read it in details. Solution of solids in liquids are discussed to some extent in ionic equilibrium, KSP, and other things we have discussed, and will be discussed later in colligative properties. The next class I will take on colligative properties. And let us discuss the solution of liquids in liquid. And liquid means the solute and solvents both are liquids, which may contain one or more or more volatile components. And liquid in liquids means both the liquids can be volatile liquids. So generally, the liquid solvent is volatile, that we know. The solvent is usually volatile. The solute volatile means it evaporates very easily, and the solute may or may not be volatile. Solute, if the solute is volatile, then something that we will be studying today, and if it is not non-volatile, then again we will go to the colligative properties. So the note that our focus is mostly on properties of binary solutions, that is the solutions containing two components only. We will be studying two different laws given by Francois Martin Raoult for binary solutions. So he gave two laws for binary solution. One law he has given for the liquids in liquid solution, means for two volatile liquids. If there are two volatile liquids and they are mixed together, so you will get a solution. And the first law that he has given, it is for that solution when the two volatile liquids are mixed together to form a solution. And another law that we will study, that will be not only laws, so the set of laws, 2-3 laws that we will study when we will study colligative properties, relative lowering of vapor pressure. So those kind of things that we will see. And with the help of these two laws, we shall try to understand the change in vapor pressure of two different types of solutions. So whether if the solute is non-volatile, a different set of laws is given. If it is volatile, a different law is given. Let us go one by one. So let us first go to the vapor pressure. So if the liquid is a volatile liquid, so what will happen if you keep a pure liquid? You start with a pure liquid, you keep it in a vessel, close the vessel. What will happen? Initially, only the particles were in the liquid phase. What will happen? Some particles will take energy or heat from the environment, and or not only environment, and it will escape out. It may also happen that even the particles, they move inside. Sometimes collision may also happen, and because of that collision, the kinetic energy of some of the particles or molecules may increase significantly, and if it will increase significantly, it will go to the vapor phase. And it will start, means the evaporation of the liquid will start, and after a certain time an equilibrium will be established. And once that equilibrium will be established, that pressure that you will measure is called the vapor pressure of that liquid. And the vapor pressure of a liquid that we find when the liquid is volatile liquid. If the liquid is not volatile, then there will be no vapor, and so there is no thing that we discuss. So anyway, so in the case, the vapor pressure exerted by a vapor over the liquid surface at equilibrium is called vapor pressure. This is what I have discussed. If the solute is non-volatile, solid or liquid, non-volatile, solute is non-volatile, if then the vapor pressure of solution is equal to the vapor pressure of the solvent in the solution. Means if the solute is non-volatile, so solute will not go, it will not evaporate. So whatever the thing will be in the vapor, it will only be the solvent molecules. The solvent even can evaporate when it is in the solution form. So some evaporation of the solvent will happen, but the vapor phase will exclusively contain the solvent molecules. It won't contain the non-volatile solutes. However, if your solute is a volatile solid, whether it is solid, liquid, if it is a gas, and it is anyway volatile. So if it is, whether it is solid or liquid, the vapor pressure will be equal to, the vapor pressure means the total pressure of the vapor in the equilibrium of the solution will be equal to the partial sum of the partial pressures of the solute and that of the solvent. And this is nothing but the Dalton's law of partial pressure. So the means the some molecules of solute is also there, some molecules of solvent is also there. So they both will have certain partial pressure, and adding up them, you will get the total pressure. This is what we have studied in Dalton's law. And so now let us look at this. So far, so good. So we have seen certain things. The volatile solute will also have some molecules, certain partial pressure into the vapor phase. Now the vapor pressure of liquids in liquid solution, that will look at liquid and liquid solution, the binary solution or liquids in liquid solution. Let us consider a binary solution of two volatile liquids and denote the two components as A and B. So here we are going to study one of the laws given by the Raoults, and that is for the volatile liquids, two volatile liquids, the binary solution we are going to take. And the binary solutions, let us consider both the liquids are A and B, and they both are volatile. When taken in a closed vessel, why closed vessel? If it is not a closed vessel, there will be no equilibrium that will be achieved. All the gases that will come after the evaporation will go out and it will mix with atmosphere, which acts as a sink. It is an infinite source. So there will be no increase in partial pressure. So this evaporation will keep happening. This evaporation will keep happening. And that is what we see. The water, the flows, and not only if you put certain amount of water into a vessel and there is nothing even at the room temperature, normal temperature, not at the boiling temperature, you go out for certain things for 1 week or something, we will come out and you'll see that there is no water into your glass or whatever the vessel you have put it. That means this evaporation will keep happening and whatever the molecules will be there, this equilibrium will never be achieved. And this equilibrium will never be achieved means the evaporation will keep happening and until all the molecules of the liquid is evaporated. However, if the vessel is closed, so then an equilibrium will be achieved. Why equilibrium will be achieved? So once these gas molecules, this solvent the molecules, even the volatile solutes are now in the gaseous phase. Now these gas molecules also they move, they will collide as because of the sometimes collision. What will happen? Not only they will collide here, they will also collide to the solvent surface and they are sometimes they stuck there and will be there. And even if the condensation will also happen, if this is there and the condensation will happen, and because of the condensation, the gas molecules will again go into the liquid phase. And so this is will at equilibrium, the rate of condensation will be equal to the rate of evaporation. And this thing we have seen earlier. Now, when the taken in a closed vessel, both the components would evaporate and eventually an equilibrium would be established between vapor phase and the liquid phase. Let the total vapor pressure at this stage be PT, P total that we call P total, P and PA and PP be the partial pressures of the two components A and B respectively. So if the partial pressure of A, the component A in the gas phase, when we are talking about the partial pressure, it means it is always a gaseous state. Is all we are always talking about the gaseous phase. So the whatever the some vapor is there, some vapor of A, liquid A will be there in the vessel above the solution, and that phase pressure, the partial pressure, let's consider it is PA, and that of B is PB. And adding up P according to Dalton's law, PA plus PB will give us PT or P total, the total pressure. The partial pressure are related to the mole fraction XA and XB of the two components A and B respectively in the solution. And how are they related? What I have said is the partial pressure is somehow related to the mole fraction of A and B into the solution, mole fraction of A and B into the solution. But how they are related, this is what was given by the Raoult and the French chemist Francois Martel Raoult in 1886 gave the quantitative relationship between them and quantitative relationship between partial pressure and mole fraction of the component into the solution. And what he suggested, he stated that for a solution of volatile liquids, the partial pressure of each component of the solution is directly proportional to its mole fraction present in the solution. So the partial pressure of each component, let us consider that component as A. So the partial pressure of A will be directly proportional to the mole fraction of that component, means that this component A into the solution. Similarly, we can have PB will be directly proportional to the another component, directly proportional to XB, the mole fraction of B into the solution. So if you do this, now if you remove this proportionality, you will get certain, you have to add certain constant, and it has been found experimentally that is this constant is nothing but the vapor pressure of the pure liquid. And pure liquid, suppose this A, which was a liquid, if only A is there and whatever the total pressure, if the pure A is there and the vapor pressure that will be there for pure component A, that is what the proportionality constant here. So PA will be equal to P naught A into XA, where P naught A is vapor pressure of pure component A at the same temperature. At the same temperature means the temperature at which you are measuring, you are applying this Raoult's law. Similarly, for component B, we can also obtain PB will be equal to P naught B into xb, the mole fraction of B into the solution. P naught B represents the vapor pressure of pure component B at the given temperature. And now what usually we see, if A and B are there in the solution, they both are liquid. So they both are liquid. So and now they will evaporate and some molecules will be there in A and B. So similarly, so when, according to Dalton's law of partial pressure, now what we know, this the total pressure we can obtain P total as partial pressure of A plus partial pressure of B. And over the solution, so Dalton's law we can apply, and so P total will be equal to PT or something of P total. PT is equal to PA plus PB, the partial pressure of A plus partial pressure of B. Now what we know also from that with Raoult's law, that PA is equal to P naught A into XA. PA is equal to P naught A into XA. P naught A into XA and P naught B, PB is P naught B into XB. So now what we get, XA plus, also the thing is from mole fraction, what we know, if the two components are there, the mole fraction of both the components should be equal to 1. So the mole fraction XA plus XB should be equal to 1. So what can I write? XA is equal to 1 minus XB. So here from what we get, P total will be equal to P naught A XA plus P naught B XB. From the Raoult's law, this we get from the Dalton's law, and these values we get put from the Raoult's law. And here we know from the mole fraction. Now what can I do? What I can put the value of XA from this equation in this equation. So the PT will be equal to P naught A into XA. XA is what? 1 minus XB. So 1 minus XB plus P naught B into XB. This is what I have written here. So the PT will be equal to P naught A, on further simplification, P naught A minus P naught into XB. P naught A into XB plus P naught B into XB. So what can we do? XB we can take common. So it will be equal to P naught A is here plus P naught B minus P naught A, and when we take out XB as common, because this P naught A into XB is what it comes with the minus. So the P naught A will be in the with the minus sign. And this is what we reach here. It means if I plot a graph between PT and XB, one of the component, I should get a straight line. A straight line, why? This is the equation of the straight line. This is a constant. It is the pressure of the total pressure of the pure component, vapor pressure of the pure component A. So this is a constant. So we should get this value, and this is what we plot a graph between vapor pressure and mole fraction of another component, a second component. Suppose here in this graph we have taken component, we presented components as 1 and 2. Here we have considered A and B. So here definitely what we get there, we should get a straight line. And this straight line means what? If XB is 0, if XB is 0, or means the X2 is 0, what we get? Total pressure is equal to P naught A. Or P naught A is the P naught A. So we reach here. And if PB is equal to PA, then again it will be the same. And what we get, if XA is 0, means the XB is equal to 1. And if XB is equal to 1, XB is equal to 1 means what? XA is equal to 0. XB, then only XB will be equal to 1. Then the PT will be equal to P naught A plus, and then this is plus P naught B minus P naught A. And P naught plus P naught A and minus P naught A, it will be cancelled out. So we will reach P naught B. So what happens? This graph starts at P naught A and ends at P naught B. What we have to think here is P naught A is a smaller value than P naught B. It means P naught B, the B of the two, the second component of this binary liquid solution, is more volatile. So its vapor pressure is more, and this is less volatile. And based on that, following conclusions or inferences can be drawn from this equation. And the total, what is that? The total vapor pressure over the solution can be related to the mole fraction of any of the component. and the total pressure is proportional to the mole fraction of any of the component. As I have written here, x is equal to 1 minus xb. Similar thing you can also write xb is equal to 1 minus xa and 1 minus xa. Then you will obtain this equation in terms of xa. And with that, you can also draw a graph, and the graph nature of that graph will be the same. And this is what this sentence says: the total vapor pressure over the solution can be related to the mole fraction of any one of the component for the binary solution. And total vapor pressure over the solution varies linearly with the mole fraction of component B. And this is what we have seen here. It is linearly varying depending on the vapor pressure of the pure component A and B. Total vapor pressure over the solution decreases or increases with the increase of mole fraction of A. So what does it mean? If the mole fraction of the vapor pressure of B of, or 2 is more, then it will start and it will keep increasing. If this one is a smaller value, so what will we get? This value will be negative. So this graph, the nature of this graph will be something like this. But this will still be a straight line. So in that case, P1 or the component A will be more volatile. If component A is more volatile, so this will be like this. And component B is more volatile, so you will get an increasing slope. And why? Because P naught B minus P naught A will always be positive, and if this is positive, so the slope will be positive. And if the vapor pressure of A will be more and vapor pressure than vapor pressure of B, so PB minus P naught B minus P naught A will be negative, and negative means the slope you will get is the value of M will be negative, so that will come with the negative slope. So now the lines 1 and 2 pass through point for which x1 and x2 are equal to unity. So what we see, x1, this is how the partial pressure of P1 is changing. The partial pressure as the mole fraction of component B of 2 is increasing, the partial pressure of this in the vapor phase will decrease, and it will become 0 when the mole fraction of component A in the solution is 0. And it will be maximum when the mole fraction of A is 1. Mole fraction of A is 1 in the solution means what? It is pure A. There is no B. It is not a solution. Similar thing we can see for the second component as well. So this plot represents the vapor pressure and mole fraction of an ideal solution at constant temperature. And this graph, whatever that thing that we have seen till now, this law, it is only valid for the ideal solutions. And what are the ideal solutions? What is the definition of ideal solution? How will we recognize whether the solution is near the ideal solution or not? That we will see little later. On the problem, so the minimum value of P total is P naught 1 here in this graph, and the maximum value is P naught 2. Assuming that component 1 is less volatile than component 2. This is already the assumption that we have made, because A and B, some assumptions that some gases, unknown gases we have taken. If you take a real gas, different component, different liquids we have taken. If you take real liquids, real volatile liquids, depending on that, this graph nature that we can find out whether this will be with the increasing slope or decreasing slope. It means here that a P naught 1 is less than P naught 2. And this I think I have explained already. So composition of the vapor. Now what we have seen, that you have taken a solution, and what you see in the solution, some vapor, the evaporation of both the liquids happens because they are volatile, and some partial pressure that we are talking about, the partial pressure of each components will be there into the vapor phase. And that partial pressure, based on that partial pressure and partial pressure that is given is PA and PB. And partial pressure and total pressure from PA and PB we can also calculate PT, because PA plus PB will be PT, total pressure. Based on that, we can also calculate the mole fraction of each component into the vapor phase. We have started with the mole fraction of each component into the solution because we have started with the solution. Now with this partial pressure, we can also get an extra information. We can extract another information, and that is the mole fraction of each component into the vapor phase. And suppose if Ya and Yb are mole fractions of component A and B respectively in the vapor phase, then what will happen? Pa will be equal to this formula. We know, we have studied in Dalton's law of partial pressure. The partial pressure of a gas will be equal to the mole fraction of that gas into the total pressure. A mole of fraction of that gas into the vapor phase or the gaseous phase. It's not in the liquid phase. And this, the vapor, in the vapor phase, mole fraction of A is Ya. This is what we had assumed. So the partial pressure of A will be equal to Ya into Pt. And so from that we can calculate Ya, the mole fraction of A into vapor phase, as partial pressure of A divided by total pressure. And total pressure means the vapor pressure of partial pressure of A plus partial pressure of B at equilibrium. Similarly, we can write Pb is equal to Yb, the mole fraction of B in the to the vapor phase into total pressure. And so from here we can calculate Yb, mole fraction of B into the vapor phase, as equal to partial pressure of B divided by total pressure. And this formula, these things, though the formulas are very familiar, you are familiar with this formula. They are very easy to remember, and is very common with the mole fraction. If the mole fraction will be more, but the partial pressure is more means what? Partial pressure, it also represents the partial concentration. Mole fraction also represents partial concentration, the partial concentration. So if the this is directly proportional to anyway, the proportionality, that constant is anyway 1 by Pt, the total pressure. So the vapor, let us look at one numerical problem. The vapor pressure of chloroform. Chloroform is a liquid, you know, it's a solvent, and dichloromethane, which is also a liquid, CH2Cl2, at 298 Kelvin are 200 mmHg and 415 mmHg respectively. And what does it mean? These liquids are less volatile than water. Why less volatile than water? We know there is just one thing that I want to tell, that the at 100, this 298 means what? It is 25 degrees centigrade. And at 100 degrees centigrade means 273 Kelvin. What we know, the is the boiling point of water. And boiling point is what? The vapor pressure of a liquid becomes equal to the atmospheric pressure, means 1 atmospheric pressure. Means at 273 Kelvin itself, water's vapor pressure was equal to 1 atmospheric pressure. However, for chloroform and dichloromethane, what we are saying, their vapor pressures are still much less than the 1 atmospheric pressure, which is 760 mmHg. So they are less volatile than water. So why I have told this, even if you compare these two, because by this looking at these values, you should have this information that which liquid is more volatile. So if you simply compare these vapor pressures of these two liquids, the vapor pressure of chloroform is less than vapor pressure of dichloromethane. It means dichloromethane is more volatile than methanol. And how, the another thing is, another way to think of about this is, the if you look at the molecular weight of chloroform, it is more than dichloromethane, because in the chloroform, if you go from this dichloromethane to chloroform, you have to replace one hydrogen with one chlorine, and chlorine is much heavier than hydrogen, so this is heavier. This one is, the chloroform is heavier, molar mass is more, it is heavier molecule, and so it's definitely its volatility will be less, because you need to provide more energy to evaporate it, to put it into the gaseous phase. Anyway, that thing, so the vapor pressure of both the chloroform and dichloromethane is given at 298 Kelvin. We have to calculate the vapor pressure of solution prepared by mixing 25.5 gram of chloroform and 40 gram of dichloromethane at the same temperature. The first part, so let us start with the first part. So what is the amount of chloroform and dichloromethane is given. So from the amount, we can calculate their number of moles. And to calculate the number of moles, we need molar mass of both the molecules, chloroform and dichloromethane. And that we can calculate because we know the molecular formula. And from the molecular formula, molar mass of CH2Cl2, dichloromethane, we can calculate 12 plus 2 hydrogen atoms 2 and 2 chlorine atoms 2 into 35.5. This will be equal to 85 gram per mole. And the molar mass of chloroform will be equal to 12 into 1 plus 1 hydrogen, 1, 1, 4, and 3 chlorine atoms, 3 chlorine atoms, 35.5 into 3. Then this will come to be 119.5 gram per mole. 119.5 gram per mole. So now from these values, we can calculate the moles of dichloromethane and chloroform. And the formula we know, the mass in gram divided by molar mass for the chloroform. But we get the number of moles will be equal to 25.5 gram divided by molar mass of chloroform, which is 119.5 gram per mole. This will be equal to 0.213 mole. And the moles of dichloromethane can also be calculated similarly. This will be equal to the mass of dichloromethane in a gram divided by molar mass of dichloromethane. So this is given 40 gram. The mass of dichloromethane divided by 85 gram per mole. This value we have calculated. So this will be equal to 0.47 moles. Now from their moles, we can also calculate the total number of moles of both the liquids. And the total number of moles of both the liquids in the solution will be equal to the number of moles of this plus number of moles of this. This will be equal to 0.47 plus 0.213, which is 0.683 mole. And the total moles that if we know, we can calculate the mole fraction of each component in the solution. How? Because we know that their individual number of moles and total moles we know. So from individual moles, the number of moles of dichloromethane divided by total number of moles is so 0.47 divided by 0.683 mole. This will be equal to 0.688. And the mole fraction of chloroform will be equal to, now we can calculate 1 minus mole fraction of dichloromethane, or the number of moles of methanol, which is 0.213 divided by total number of moles 0.683, and this will come out to be 0.312. The mole fraction of both the components in solution now we have calculated. If we know the mole fraction of both the components into the solution, and we also know their vapor pressure when they are in the pure form, with that we can find out the partial pressure of both the gases. And so the mole, what we have to calculate here is calculate the vapor pressure of solution prepared by mixing. So the partial pressure of both the components we can calculate, and with the partial pressure, if you add them, you will get the total pressure. Or what can you do? You can start with the total pressure will be equal to partial pressure of chloroform plus partial pressure of dichloromethane. And now we know the partial pressure of chloroform will be equal to the pressure. So the vapor pressure of pure chloroform into the mole fraction that we do not know in the mole fraction into the solution. We have just calculated this. We do not. This is also given. So the PA1 can calculate, the value of PB1 can also calculate, and then you can add, you will get the total pressure. One way. Another way is this formula that we have taken here. This way you can calculate the mole fraction of one in terms of other, and so you will finally reach at this formula. It's this formula here. You can apply this formula directly, or you can derive it. And if you apply that formula directly, so what will you get? The P naught A plus P naught B minus P naught A into XB. And here P naught A one can consider as chloroform and P naught B as dichloromethane. And the chloroform, the P naught A, the vapor pressure is 200 plus the vapor pressure of dichloromethane, which is 415, minus the pressure of again chloroform into the mole fraction of dichloromethane. This is XB. So mole fraction of dichloromethane, because dichloromethane we have considered, we have taken as XB. And so after solving this, you will get 347.9 mmHg. So this is the total pressure or vapor pressure of the solution. Coming to the second part of the question, we have also to calculate mole fraction of each component in vapor phase. Now the mole fraction of each component to the vapor phase has to be calculated. To do that, you have to calculate the partial pressure of each component into the vapor phase. So partial pressure, since we needed to calculate here, you can directly could have done this and adding value, you could have get that. Anyway, since we have not done this, so what we can do, the partial pressure we can calculate. And partial pressure, how will we calculate? the partial pressure of CH2Cl2 will be equal to the mole fraction, sorry, here the mole fraction of CH2Cl2 into the solution into the total pressure, this formula that from the Raoult's law, this we can apply. This is the mole fraction into the solution. This is the vapor pressure of the pure component and the partial pressure in the gas phase. So this we can apply here. So the mole fraction of CH2Cl2 into the solution into the vapor pressure of this, and vapor pressure of this component, you will get the partial pressure. And this is the vapor pressure that we know from the Raoult's law. Again, from the Raoult's law, we can also calculate the vapor pressure of chloroform into the gaseous phase, and this will be equal, how will this will be equal to the mole fraction of chloroform into the solution, the mole which is 0.312. So 0.312 into the vapor pressure of chloroform. So vapor pressure of chloroform in the question is already given 200 mmHg. So that I can write, and this formula that I obtained from the Raoult's law. And so after solving this, we get this value 62.4 mmHg. And this piece CH2Cl2 285.5 mmHg. Now the partial pressure of each gasage in the vapor phase, we know the total pressure, we also know from here, and even if it is not there, now you can add these values and you will get the same value. So the total pressure we also know, so from that we can find out the mole fraction of each components, each vapors into the gaseous phase, and this will be equal to the partial pressure of, so the mole fraction of dichloromethane will be equal to partial pressure of dichloromethane divided by total pressure. And the partial pressure we have obtained as 285.5 mmHg divided by total pressure we have obtained here 347.9 millimeter Hg, and this will be equal to 0.82. This will again be dimensionless, same these values will be cancelled out. The mole fraction of dichloromethane, chloroform will be equal to the partial pressure of chloroform divided by total pressure or total vapor pressure. Now the partial pressure of chloroform is 62.4 mmHg, that is given, that we have calculated, and this value is here. So this is 0.18. And even if you don't calculate this from this value, anyway, this plus this will be equal to 1. So 1 minus 0.82 would have directly got this 0.18 value. Now here what we know, the mole fraction of Y is more than Y, is dichloromethane is more in gaseous phase than mole fraction of chloroform, which means that dichloromethane is more volatile. So since dichloromethane is more volatile component than chloroform, the PCH2, this we also know, I have already told in the comparison, and the vapor phase is also richer in CH2Cl2. What we have seen, we have already taken more dichloromethane than chloroform. In the relative amount of dichloromethane is much more than that of the chloroform. That is why the mole fraction of dichloromethane is much higher than, or almost twice, more than twice to the mole fraction of mole fraction of chloroform. It means it was already, the dichloromethane was already richer into the solution phase. Now in the gaseous phase also dichloromethane is richer, and it is richer because it is more volatile. If it was not more volatile, what would have got? You would have got the mole fraction of chloroform was more than mole fraction of dichloromethane if chloroform was more volatile than dichloromethane. But this is not true. So we get the mole fraction of dichloromethane in the vapor phase is more than mole fraction of chloroform. And let us see this thing, last topic, Raoult's law as a special case of Henry's law. Henry's law and Raoult's law, that Raoult's law that we have studied for the volatile, two volatile liquids, binary solution of two volatile liquids. What we have seen again in there, what we have, mole fraction, if you consider one of the component, the solvent, as the solvent that we have seen into the Henry's law, and another component which is solute, suppose a smaller amount as a solute, and that you can compare with the gas that we have seen in the Henry's law. If you compare that, what will you see? These two laws are almost same. So according to Raoult's law, the pressure of a volatile component in the given solution is given by what? The formula is Pi is equal to mole fraction of I into Pi naught total. This is vapor pressure of component I. And in the solution of a gas in a liquid, one of the components is so volatile that exists as a gas. It means because this was in the Raoult law, we also have taken the volatile liquids. And if that volatile liquid is so volatile that at normal temperature it exists as a gas, then you will get everything for the Henry's law. And the solvent that you have considered there, the solvent you can still consider here as a solvent. And the Henry's law, the pressure, again the pressure is equal to X mole fraction. The thing is, and both the times we have certain constants. The kh, here it is kh, and here what we get, the vapor pressure of that pure liquid. So if we compare the equations of Raoult's law and Henry's law, it can be seen that the partial pressure of the volatile component or a gas is directly proportional to its mole fraction in the solution. What we have seen, volatile components mole fraction partial pressure is proportional to the mole fraction of the solute, and this is what the solute, the volatile component in both the cases. Only the proportionality constant kh differs from P1 naught, and thus Raoult's law becomes a special case of Henry's law, in which kh becomes equal to P1 naught. So if kh, the Henry's law constant, becomes equal to the vapor pressure of one of the components of the binary liquids, then what can we say? We can say that Raoult's law is same as that of the binary, the Henry's law. And here I will stop, and in the next class we'll see ideal, non-ideal solutions and the colligative properties and so on.